Joe Biden buyer's remorse? Are you there yet? A lot of America is there, and that's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt. I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. And I want to remind you that not only can you get Bold and Blunt at WashingtonTimes.com, but you can also pick it up at Edify, E-D-I-F-I, edify.com, which is the platform for faith-based podcasts. And look, if you're one of these Americans who are watching feckless Joe Biden's administration go down the rabbit hole to disaster, and you are feeling thuds in your heart every day as you turn on the news, as you read the headlines, as you listen to the headlines, well, how about a little faith injected into your life? And nothing says faith like a faith-based podcast, right? So easy to download and listen. 30 minutes of your time. You can tune into a faith-based podcast at Edify, like Bold and Blunt, as you watch the darkness unfold on your TV screens called Daily Headlines. And indeed, we are inundated daily with dark, bleak headlines from this Joe Biden administration. What's up with that? And I'm not talking about headlines just simply from the more conservative platforms, from Newsmax TV or Newsmax, the online site, or One America News. I'm not talking about headlines just from those outlets. Go to CNN, go to MSNBC. Well, maybe not MSNBC. Okay, they're still in the tank. But go to CNN, go to NBC, go to Drudge Report even. It's not like he puts out all these great, glossy, glowing headlines about the great Joe Biden. And now here comes this headline just recently from Citizens Journal. It was September 4th. 20% of Biden voters now have buyer's remorse. And then the quote as the second headline, this could really hurt. You think? You think it could really hurt? I think so. I mean, nothing says failure to a president like losing his base voters who just elected him, supposedly elected him anyhow. That is still in dispute in many circles. But for the sake of argument and time, let's just say that elected him just a few months earlier. I mean, usually it takes a lot longer for a politician to fall out of favor with his core voting base, right? I mean, usually it takes a year or two because it takes that long for voters to catch on to, say, the politician's lies and deceptions. And it takes that long for some of the voters to get actually on websites where they can check and prove the lies and deceptions of their elected politician. So it takes a while for a politician's deceptions and failures to catch up with him or her. Ask Eric Cantor from Virginia, who lost in the Tea Party sweep to Dave Brat, right? Eric Cantor was on Capitol Hill just cantering away in politics, pretending away to being a staunch conservative Republican defender of the Constitution and limited government, all the while cutting deals with the more rhino types of his party and even Democrats. And you know, the Tea Party said, enough's enough. We're going to run this no-name guy named Dave Brat. And look what happened. He won. But my point for telling the Eric Cantor, Dave Brat political story is not about the strength of the Tea Party, which, you know what, it's still pretty strong nowadays. But really, it's to show that it takes time for voters to realize that the politicians that they were once enamored with are actually doing the deed for the Democrats, are actually doing the political deeds for the other side, have actually joined, you could say, the camp of the enemy, and are working busily against the interests of the very people who voted them in office in the first place. It takes time. And in Eric Cantor's case, it took a lot of time because this guy was in office for a while and he rose up the political ranks. His star was shiny. His star was glossy and glowing. And boom, voters caught on to the fact that he wasn't doing their will and they turned against him. Joe Biden, though, Joe Biden's only been in office for, what, a day? I mean, I know it feels like about a decade, but seriously, the guy's only been there for a short time. And he's already lost 20% of those who voted for him. Now, say what you want about that 20%. I mean, that 20% that voted for him that now finds that he is not the guy that they actually voted for. You can call them ignorant. You can call them politically unaware. You can call them the low information voter. And in my mind, anyone who votes for a Democrat, particularly a Democrat like Joe Biden, has to be a low information voter, because the Democrat Party today is more aligned with the Communist Party than with the Democrat Party of John F. Kennedy days, or even, truth be told, of Bill Clinton days. This modern day Democrat Party hates America. Hates America. As a matter of fact, I think you have to take that as an oath in order to run on a Democrat Party ticket. You have to go behind closed doors somewhere and pledge allegiance to some sort of Democrat leader. Perhaps it's Anthony Fauci, or perhaps it's Kamala Harris, or perhaps it's George Soros, or some other dark beast to the left. But you have to actually probably, this is my best guess, to have the support of the Democrat Party, you have to pledge allegiance to some far leftist, socialist / communist elite. And if you pledge allegiance to China's government, well, that just moves you quickly, rapidly, straight up. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. The Democrat Party ranks, they will choose you as their next heir apparent. They will choose you as their next star. So the 20% who actually voted for Joe Biden, who now, according to the September 4th article posted by Citizens Journal based on polling, who now detest Joe Biden, and detest is my word. They probably don't detest him at all, but really, you should be detesting him. You should be detesting this man, because he is single-handedly, through his fecklessness and through his silence and through his inability to form a coherent sentence and stand on any type of policy that isn't spoon-fed to him through his White House by far leftist forces, you should detest him for single-handedly, practically, bringing down this nation, for crippling capitalism, for undercutting our Constitution. It's good news that 20% of Joe Biden voters have seen the light of day and have turned from Joe Biden. But does that mean that they would actually vote for somebody who's sane next time? Because I'm not so certain that these 20% of Biden voters who now have buyer's remorse to the degree that they will abandon the communists and socialists in the Democrat Party and jump into the sane ship of the Republican Party, or comparatively saner ship anyhow. Or if it just means that they don't like Joe Biden anymore and they're ready for the next Democrat, whomever it may be. I think probably Democrats don't learn their lessons, and Democrats don't ever consider conservative candidates because they by and large buy in to the media lies that all Republicans are racist and all conservatives are misogynists and so forth. In other words, I don't think these 20% of Biden voters who now have buyer's remorse, according to this September 4th piece in Citizens Journal, are now going to see the light enough that they will vote for the other party come 2022 or come 2024. They're just going to go merrily making the same mistakes they make. And in some cases, it's not even mistakes. They don't care who the Democrat is so long as the Democrat is busily destroying America. Because as I said, the Democrat Party platform is far more similar to the Socialist and Communist Party platforms than it is to anything that remotely screams America. And if you don't believe me on that, do your own research. Look up Democrat Party platform, look up Socialist Party platform, Progressive Party platform, Communist Party platform, and then Republican Party platform. I know I did. I did in my most recent book, Socialists Don't Sleep, Christians Must Rise or America Will Fall. And what I printed in those pages was the similarities between the Democrats, the Socialists, the Communists, and the Progressives, pretty much all going for the same thing. And the only different party was the Republican Party. It was the only one that offered something different from the other parties together. That being said, let's talk about Anthony Fauci. It's not a big jump because here we are talking about communism and socialism, so the natural segue is Anthony Fauci. Anthony Fauci, who just happily, oh, aren't we so grateful to this guy? He gave us back Christmas. He tried to take it away, and then angry Americans pressed him on it. To the credit of the mainstream media, they even double questioned him. They even said, Anthony, are you sure we can't have Christmas this year? Are you sure? And he backtracked. He backtracked and said, you know what? I'm going to celebrate Christmas this year, and I expect all of America to do the same. Well, aren't we so lucky to have Anthony Fauci giving us permission to gather as family and friends and celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ? Look, Anthony Fauci managed to kill every core American holiday last year. He sure did. He did it completely with a hands-off approach. He did it in a deceptive, slyly, snaky way. The Anthony Fauci method of controlling is to suggest, is to throw something out, is to float something out, and then pretend in a backpedal, well, I'm not dictating policy. That's not my job. My job is only to give the best medical science, blah, blah, blah. And I don't mean to quote Greta Thunberg here in her recent speech in Milan, but blah, 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 blah. So Anthony Fauci, he's expert at throwing and floating out what he wants in terms of control and authoritarianism and tyranny. But then he throws his hands in the air like he don't care and pretends, well, I'm not giving policy. And then here come the far leftist Anthony Fauci fawners in the media to pick up where he floats an idea and run roughshod with it as if he's dictating something in a best medical way that we better obey or people are going to die. So how is it not policy? How is it not policy to say, you don't have to do this, but if you don't do this, people will die, and then leave it to others to make the decision on how best to approach the issue? Well, of course, the left uses that. That's their tool. That's their tool of control. The left takes what Anthony Fauci floats, that he says in very unclear, unprecise language, and they spin it to mean what they need it to mean in order to enforce clampdowns on individual liberties in this country. And by the left, I mean the Democrat Party and their friends in the media. So Anthony Fauci, very hands-off last year, managed to kill Easter, shut churches, kill Easter, kill the 4th of July celebrations, kill Halloween. Too dangerous to go outside, too dangerous because, you know, best medical practice when you're sick, you want to stay inside and close the windows and stay in enclosed rooms with no circulation and huddle everybody in that house. Huddle everybody. Get as many people as you can to huddle inside with the closed windows and no circulation. Kill Halloween, and then merrily moved on to Thanksgiving and Christmas. He floated out there that he wasn't going to have his normal holiday celebrations with his family, and boy, he was distressed about that, but he was going to take one for the team because he was doing his best to control the spread of the coronavirus. And so, not policy, but we should all do that as well, or consider doing that as well, or people will die. So last year, it was cheerless all year long because all America's core holidays were killed. And so Anthony Fauci, again, gearing up for the next, right? Because Anthony Fauci is somebody who thinks he's king, but a hands-off king, somebody who just whispers and lets the minions carry out the actual enforcement. So Anthony Fauci geared up to do the same thing this year. Here comes Halloween, right? So he was ready to go, shut down Halloween. Christmas, asked about Christmas, and at first he said, well, yeah, it's dangerous. It's too early to tell. In other words, he's floating. It's dangerous. People could die. But he got some backlash this time. So then he got pushed back and he had to say, of course have Christmas. I give you Christmas. I am Anthony Fauci. I give you Christmas. And then a few days later, he gives us Halloween. He's such a guy, isn't he? He's such a great guy. Thank you, Anthony Fauci. Thank you for Halloween. Thank you so much for letting me outdoors. I love that about Anthony Fauci. He giveth and he taketh. What a guy. So anyhow, Anthony Fauci is still out there on his white horse, riding through America, deigning to look down on the rest of us and grant us holidays. A holiday for you? No holiday for you. Are you vaccinated? Take 2 holidays. Have a turkey on me. Anthony Fauci is still out there riding his white horse across America. But, get this. Here's a little bit of happy news. My next bold and blunt guest, my guest today, thinks his days are numbered. And that is worthy of applause. Peter Navarro, former assistant to President Donald J. Trump. Doesn't it have such a nice ring to it, President Trump? Here, let's compare. President Joe Biden, licking on his ice cream cone, or President Donald J. Trump. President Joe, give me a cone. President Donald J. Trump. Which sounds better? Anyhow, Peter Navarro, former assistant to President Donald Trump, author of a new book coming up in November. It's called In Trump Time, a journal of America's plague year. America's plague year. I know that means the coronavirus, but Joe Biden's kind of a plague too, right? Maybe his follow-up should be a journal of America's plague 4 years. A look at the Joe Biden administration. Anyhow, Peter Navarro, thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure here in the swamp. Always great to talk to the Wash Times, the best paper in town, by the way.
Hey, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And you have what is going to be a tremendous book coming out about your time in the Trump administration. And I want to talk about that with you. But I wanted to first ask you, because of your capacity, your work as Director of Trade in the Trump administration, what is the Joe Biden administration doing wrong that is causing thousands of shipping containers to just sit idle in off America's shores?
Well, the In Trump Time book at the very beginning lays out what exactly we did dating back to the campaign in 2016 in terms of economic policy. And we had a very clear 6 points of the compass economic plan. And what Biden has systematically done, and I actually wrote an op-ed back in June in the Washington Times on this, is reverse everything, okay? Reverse everything on that. So he's not only ruined the Trump economic plan, he's failed to recognize the single biggest problem we're facing, which gets to your ships offshore, which is the supply chain shocks that we're suffering because of the mismanagement of the pandemic. The pandemic has had it's been like a neutron bomb on our labor force, and the cascading effects of labor shortages have gone to our shipyards, our supermarkets, and everything in between. So that's a long answer to a short question, but at the root of that, I think is just the Chinese Communist Party virus impact on the labor market.
and the real root is having Democrats in charge. I mean, let's face it.
Yeah, let's do that. No, this is the epilogue to In Trump Time lays out kind of like the vision for what we should be doing, but everything preceding that is a tragedy. The In Trump Time book starts with my foibles with Anthony Fauci. I mean, this man.
Yeah,
talk about him. Absolutely evil, and let's not forget that this pandemic is the root of a lot of the problems we're facing now. It's cost us trillions and trillions upon dollars. It's acted as a severe negative economic shock to our major metropolitan areas. I don't know if you know this, but like the occupancy rates, commercial office buildings now, they used to be over 90% in our core metropolitan areas. they're in the 30s and 40s now. What does that mean economically, structurally? It means that the people who used to service those office buildings, for example, the janitors, the food service workers, the shops around those buildings, those people don't have jobs anymore. And I call them service sector refugees. And the problem, look, we were in the White House for 4 years. It's like, what is it you didn't like? Was it the strong growth with rising wages? Was it the secure borders? Was it peace with North Korea and Iran and China? Was it our cracking down finally on communist China? Or was it those mean tweets, right? This, Joe, Democrats, this is harder than it looks, okay? It's harder than it looks, and they are screwing up. I mean, the level of combination of incompetence and corruption, I think, is unprecedented.
Let's go back to that part where you said Anthony Fauci, this man is absolutely evil, because I agree with you. But I would like to hear from you what you base that on.
Well, Chapter 2 of the In Trump Time book starts with my first encounter with Fauci. I'm in the Situation Room. It's January 28th. The president has tasked me with bringing the White House Coronavirus Task Force over to his side in bringing down flights from China, right? This is a decision that we now know saved millions of lives, right? So I'm walking into the iconic sit room and sit down there. Mulvaney, the acting chief of staff, at the end of the table. He's the chair of the meeting. I got Began, Pompeo's second in command, a real offshore hack. I mean, this guy, not a fan of him. I got Redfield across from me at 11 o'clock from the CDC. I got Azar there. And there's this little guy with these round glasses on. Didn't know who he was. Didn't know he was a saint. Didn't know he walked on water. Within 2 minutes, I'm in a shouting match with this guy. And he's like a parrot. It's like travel bans don't work. Travel bans don't work in that thick Brooklyn accent. I'm thinking to myself, who is this guy, right? And I go to him, I say, hey, you mean if we stop 20,000 Chinese nationals a day coming into this country, many of whom are likely infected with the Wuhan virus, where the crematoria are working overtime, are you telling me, sir, that would not be a prudent thing to do, right? So that was and so throughout the book, I explain how evil this man is. I mean, he's evil. First, he makes bad decisions. I mean, to oppose the travel ban was stupid. But that same day, January 28th, Charles, he got an email from a man who told him flat out, the Scripps Institute, that virus was likely genetically engineered. Now, what did Fauci know at that point? Fauci knew that he himself had not only approved grants for the Wuhan lab, but he had also done an end run around the Trump administration in 2017 to move gain-of-function experiments at that Wuhan lab. Okay? Now, what for your listeners, gain-of-function experiments basically can take a bat virus, which can't hurt you, and turn it into the lethal weapon it has become.
Right?
So Fauci knew. Why is he evil? Like, start there. He knew for a fact that thing likely came from the lab. He did not tell the president. He did not tell the task force. He didn't tell anybody. Instead, he did just the opposite. He went forward with a cover-up where he used cutouts like Peter Daszak to spin that it was from nature. And then in another chapter, I have another showdown with him in the sit room where vice president's there. And then there's a beautiful chapter in the In Trump Time book where my team is on a Zoom call with his team and him. And at the end of it, he leaves a hot mic on. And he said some things that I'm sure he probably didn't want me to hear.
Can you detail any of those, or
no? The book's coming out in Trump Time. It'll come out. But the bigger point here is that he belongs He should be fine. Look, I'll make a prediction here. I'm not bad at prediction. After this book comes out, by December, he'll be gone because he's Custer right now. His partner in crime, Francis Collins, had to resign in disgrace last week on the basis of this funding of the Wuhan lab and the virus killing Americans. Fauci is hanging on by a thread. I'm coming at him. He's Custer last stand. I'm coming at him head on.
Good.
Got Sherry Markson coming at him on his right flank with that book happened in Wuhan, and on the left, literally, Bobby Kennedy Jr. Coming out with an expose of the bureaucracy and Fauci's role in this whole creation of the virus. So he needs to be gone. I mean, my suggestion to maybe Kamala Harris, who's in charge of the border, would be to commandeer Fauci and send him down to the border, put him in a Customs and Border Protection uniform. He can start handing out masks and the vaccines to all the 2 million illegal immigrants coming in. Keep them away from our kids in school. Keep them away from NFL players who don't want to take the vaccine. Now, I'm not anti-vax by any means. I document in Trump time. I helped make sure we had that in Trump time, which is to say as soon as possible. But you don't stick needles with that experimental vaccine in our children. And by the way, people who have antibodies from the virus have 20 times more powerful antibodies than the vaccine. And then there's a couple of articles in the Washington Times I did with Robert Malone, Dr. Robert Malone, who actually invented the technology, the RNA technology for the vaccine, where we explain why a rational vaccine policy is to vax only the most vulnerable, not everybody.
And that's how it used to be. Seriously, there's never been any kind of push to vaccinate kids with an emergency use authorization of vaccines. And look, Anthony Fauci, I 100% agree. He should be gone. The guy's a liar. He goes out there for the last year and a half and pretends he doesn't dictate policy when all along he knows he dictates policy. And the good news is what you just said. I think people are awakening to it because, look, he just gave us back Halloween and Christmas, thank goodness, after taking it away last year, right? So he knows his days are numbered.
If he's gone by Christmas, that'll be everybody's Christmas present. He needs not only be fired, he needs to be in an orange jumpsuit. I mean, literally, there's blood on his hands. I will show that. You read the book in Trump time. By the time you get through with that book, you will want him behind bars because he did. And by the way, if you're a Republican or an independent who is just ripped right now at the fact that we got Joe Biden sitting there, you'll want Fauci gone because he played a lot of dirty pool to take out the president, which again I document in Trump time.
Well, it's worthwhile reading the book just for that. But look, I would have given a week's salary to hear you shout at Anthony Fauci. And I think there's a lot of Americans who feel the same way right now.
Well, there's a great scene. The second time I met him in the sit room with Vice President Vice President Pence was there, and he tried to pull some of his bullshit. Pardon my French. You can leave that out if you want. In that situation room, and I walked straight at him with a pile of papers, plopped them on the table, and I saw fear in his eyes because he's not used to being challenged. He's used to walking on water.
Right.
He needs to go down. And by the way, there is a historical note in Trump time about Fauci's role in the AIDS crisis. I don't know if you know this.
Yep.
He was the closest thing we had to an AIDS czar back at the time. And there's several books out that describe how Fauci was responsible for the death of over 17,000 gay men because of his refusal to provide approval of drugs that were shown to be efficacious. And that's not in dispute. That's pure fact. And it's like he used the same logic or illogic, I should say, in hydroxychloroquine, which is a $12 drug,
Yep.
which hasn't killed anybody. And now we know, I mean, the science is settled on this over a year later. Hydroxychloroquine, under a doctor's supervision, will likely save your life if you take it in the first 7 days of an infection. Yeah, but so he makes the same mistakes, and it's always like, oh, we don't have the data. Yeah, we do, Tony. It's sitting right in front of your nose.
And, Peter, I don't know if you heard this, but this is the guy that one of those left-leaning media outlets painted as the sexiest man in America. Did you see that a few weeks ago? Anthony Fauci, he's like, what, like 80?
Yeah, him and George Clooney, right? I'd like to see what the auction would be to have a date night with Tony. But what I do know is that he much to my amusement, he threw the worst opening day pitch in baseball history. So there's nothing sexy about that. Yeah, I'll rub that in, Tony, because for me it was a metaphor on how bad you suck at everything.
Yeah, to a lot of us, same takeaway. So our time is kind of at an end here, and I just want to give you a last chance to talk about your book and why people should buy it. It's obvious right now just to read about Anthony Fauci, but In Trump Time, a journal of America's plague year. Why should people go out and get your book right now?
We have been besieged by left-wing lies, the likes of Woodward and Rucker and this, that, and the other thing. I was there. I was one of only 3 senior officials at the White House with the president from the campaign to the end. I saw it all. I was involved in a lot of it. In Trump Time is a book of indictments. It's Fauci. It's Woodward. It's the Chinese Communist Party. It's Mike Pence, indeed. It's also a book of revelations. What the book will do is get to the bottom of what happened on November 3rd, January 6th, in that Wuhan lab, and I think it'll give people clarity as to why we're seeing such a stark difference now once Biden took over. It's harder than it looks, Joe. We knew exactly what we were doing. President Trump was the best president in modern history, and In Trump Time talks about everything that was done to take him out wrongly and unfairly, and it's some people have said a heck of a read, if I do say so myself.
Yep, In Trump Time. It does sound like a heck of a read by Peter Navarro. Peter, thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. I really appreciate your time.
Hey, it's great to be with you.
What a fun interview. You got to get Peter's book, right? In Trump Time. I'm going to order it as soon as I wrap up this podcast. And look, I made a reference earlier about Anthony Fauci being named by a certain media outlet as the sexiest man alive, and I didn't cite the source on that. So if you're interested, check out mid-September reports from The Guardian. The Guardian names Anthony Fauci as sexiest man alive. And that came around the same time Change.org, a petition, was put out there calling, here's the headline, Make Dr. Anthony Fauci People Magazine's Sexiest Man Alive. So there's no accounting for taste, is there? As Peter was explaining, all that you need to know about Anthony Fauci can be summed up in his July 2020 tossing out of the first pitch. If you haven't seen the video, if you don't remember the video, it's worth a refresher. But Anthony Fauci, in July 2020, tossed out the first pitch between the Nationals and New York. And it's remarkable how off base he was. It's a great commentary on all that he stands for. Put it this way. Anthony Fauci is to baseball as what Bryce Harper is to helmets. And lest I get all the Nationals fans angry at me, you know what? So what? I'm a Boston fan, so there you have it. Thank you for listening. Don't forget, if you like Bold and Blunt, go to edify.com, edifi.com. Check out all the faith-based podcasts. Download them, listen to them, edify yourself. Prepare for 3+ more years of Joe Biden darkness. Seriously, that's just bleak to say. But with podcasts like Bold and Blunt, you can get through it. And of course, go to WashingtonTimes.com, download my twice weekly podcast there. Subscribe to my twice weekly Bold and Blunt podcast. As a matter of fact, you can go to WashingtonTimes.com, click on my hyperlinked name, Cheryl Chumley, and you can scroll to the bottom and subscribe to my 3 times a week newsletter, where you will get all my great commentaries that I write for the Washington Times, along with my twice weekly podcast delivered straight to your email box. I mean, how easy is that? And I know that my listeners are conservatives, which means that they are hard workers. So you don't have time to diddle around trying to figure out how to get the news that you need. You need something fast and quick and easy. And what's faster or quicker or easier than getting my podcasts and commentaries delivered right to your email box? I want to thank you for listening. Thank you. Thank you for supporting Bold and Blunt. I really appreciate it. Tune in next time. In the meanwhile, stay blunt, stay bold.